Now, Congress has to act. They have to get rid of catch and release, chain migration, visa lottery. They have to get rid of the whole asylum system because it doesn't work. And frankly, we should get rid of judges. You can't have a court case every time somebody steps their foot on our ground. The asylum program is a scam. Some of the roughest people you've ever seen. People that look like they should be fighting for the UFC. They read a little page given by lawyers that are all over the place. You know, lawyers. They tell them what to say. You look at this guy, you say, wow, that's a tough cookie. I am very fearful for my life. I am very worried that I will be accosted. If I am sent back home, no, he'll do the accosting. Asylum. Oh, give him asylum. He's afraid. He's afraid. We don't love the fact that he's got tattoos on his face. That's not a good sign.
Some of the rhetoric from President Trump in recent days on immigration and asylum. Now a federal court says the Trump administration cannot force asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their cases work their way through U.S. immigration courts. The now outgoing Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen initiated the policy in January and offered it to be expanded just last week, requiring hundreds of additional Border Patrol agents to be assigned to ports of entry in order to process asylum seekers and deport them to Mexico. But Judge Richard Seaborg of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California ruled that the policy violates immigration laws and did not include sufficient safeguards to comply with the obligation against returning migrants to places where their life or freedom would be threatened. Joining us now, a member of the House Armed Services and Homeland Security Committees, Democratic Congresswoman Xochitl Torres Small of New Mexico. Thank you so much for being on the show this morning. First of all, just the lack of people in the Homeland Security Department right now in top positions appears to be alarming at alarming levels.
It's a real cause for concern. I grew up on the border, and I know that our border policy is broken, but I don't think that what the administration is doing is helping it. In fact, in many ways, it's making it worse. And part of what we're seeing, for example, is the situation of leadership in the Department of Homeland Security. We have a real challenge in continuity. It's very difficult to build relationships and work together without a stable leadership at the top.
So explain how it's making the situation actually worse, because a lot of people, who might be buying into, we've got a real problem at the border, we're full, no more people coming in. I mean, some of these policies are actually creating the problem, are they not?
Instead of focusing on these divisive party line issues, what we should be doing is looking at ways we can keep ourselves safe. We can make sure that we're supporting law enforcement, and also that we're reflecting our values when it comes to dealing with families that are voluntarily presenting along the border. And there are bipartisan solutions. The first piece of legislation that I introduced was co-introduced with a Republican, Congressman Will Hurd, and it talked about putting together a recruitment and retention strategy in CBP to fill those hard-to-fill spots in remote areas along the border. Because one of the biggest challenges that CBP is facing is not getting the right resources in the right places. And so we should all be focused together on that.
Congresswoman, it's Willie Geist. It's good to see you this morning. As you said, you grew up along the border. You represent a district that is near the border, so you have more of a practical approach than a political approach to this question. Do you believe, as the president has said, that there is some kind of a crisis at the border? Do you believe there's a humanitarian crisis, and/or do you believe that there's a national security crisis?
So as you mentioned, I grew up along the border, and I'm actually the only member of the Homeland Security Committee that represents a district along the U.S.-Mexico border. And so I see real challenges that we're facing, and those challenges are getting bigger as we see more and more families voluntarily presenting along the border. But the lack of initiative in the administration is making that worse. For example, we had a bipartisan agreement to increase judges. That was part of the resolution over the shutdown, and instead those immigration judges haven't been hired. So there are ways that we can make our asylum process more efficient that are just being ignored right now.
So you believe there is a crisis at the border, though? It's just that there's not enough being done about it?
I believe that there are real challenges along the border and that we have to work together to address them. Whether we're squabbling over what the language is, I think further divides us instead of focusing on the ways we can fix what's happening.
Heidi.
Congresswoman, this staff shakeup pretends an even tougher approach to the border, which is, the president is making that clear. Do you know what that means in terms of policy and what Congress is prepared to do about it?
Well, we've seen a real deficit in policy when it comes to the way the administration is addressing the border situation. And so I remain optimistic that there are ways to work together if we have a real policy that looks forward towards solutions instead of trying to score political points.
But what do you think
to
this policy pretends? What is the president going to do that's even tougher than what he's already done?
That's a real concern that I have. I mean, if it's talking about, we could work together on things like making the asylum process more efficient. We could work together on supporting our law enforcement along the border, our Border Patrol and our customs officers with the right technology that can be a real personnel multiplier. We could work together on getting the right resources in the right place. I don't know if that's what the president is envisioning, but that's what I'm going to keep working towards.
All right, Congresswoman Xochitl Torres Small, thank you so much. Please come back on the show. It'd be great to have your voice a lot more. Coming up, we're learning new disturbing details about what Secret Service agents found when they arrested a Chinese woman and possible spy at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago club last month. That's ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.